Hello, everyone, and welcome to Go Ahead Tell Me. My name is Carly, and today I'm joined by award-winning filmmaker Gabriela Garcia Medina. Gabriela, thank you for joining me today. I'd love to start by hearing a bit about your background and how your work as a filmmaker has come to be.
Cool. So, hi. Thank you so much, Carly, for having me.
Of course.
My work as a filmmaker. I've always been an artist. I've always been a creative. At UCLA, I majored in theater, and I was one of very few people of color in the program. I was one of maybe two Latinos, and there were maybe a total of four people of color in a 65-person program. I felt very
Mm.
alienated while I was at UCLA. And I realized that I needed to bring some substance to my work. And so I double minored in Chicano studies and African American studies while I was at UCLA. So that was a great decision that I made for my career. It infused my art with a social purpose and a message, and it allowed me to surround myself with people that looked like me and that really inspired me in my work. After
Mhm.
graduating from UCLA, I had developed a one-woman spoken word show. So I was doing like spoken word poetry, and it became the best-selling act in the United States. So then that became my career for about 10 years, and I was just getting invited to universities and colleges all over the country, some international shows as well. And then, when I turned 30, I was like, shoot, like I love this spoken word life, but I've always loved the theater. I've always loved movies. I need to go back to that. And so I went to Cal Arts and I pursued film. And then I've been making films ever since. I've been writing scripts, I've been directing, and I've been fortunate that, my films have gotten all my three films have gotten distribution with HBO and have won awards, and I feel like I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing in my life right now.
That's amazing. Yeah, I saw something about the spoken word and how much like you like toured and were with like opened for Kamala Harris or did a
I
presentation
did.
with
My
her.
God, that was like amazing.
I bet that's incredible.
Yeah.
Um,
Actually, I haven't completely retired from spoken word because
oh,
it's
nice.
good money and it pays the bills. So I actually have a show on Tuesday in Texas. So I still do it every once in a while, but my main focus and my life's purpose is to tell beautiful visual cinematic stories.
That's incredible. That's awesome that you're still doing both. Do you find like a connection between the two at all? Like, do you find an overlap in those like creative processes?
So to be honest, I am finding it now because I was doing spoken word for so long. It became my it became my identity, and I was the spoken word girl. So when I
Mm.
decided to go to Cal Arts, I didn't want to be known for my spoken word. Like I could go into a room and if I could didn't know anyone and I did a poem, I would automatically have people that would want to talk to me because,
Mm.
oh, she's a good poet. So when I went into Cal Arts, I was like, I don't want to be known as this person anymore. I want to focus only on film. I want to redefine. I think that spoken word, I had outgrown it, to be honest.
Hmm.
And so I focused so much on film and on taking risks and on failing and on exploring my craft, and that was huge for my creative growth. And now, like maybe a few years ago, I started developing a film that is a spoken word Spanglish adaptation of a Shakespeare play. So now
Oh,
I'm like,
wow.
now I feel like I can dominate film and I'm comfortable in my spoken word, and it's been enough time where I can pull it in and really take advantage of it in a really cool creative way.
Wow, that's really cool. That sounds like an exciting adaptation to do.
And also the reason I wanted to do it too is because I learned to speak English when I was like 8 or 9 years old. So English is my second language. And going to
Mm.
school and majoring in theater, I was always very intimidated by Shakespeare. I never felt like I grasped it the way other students did. And so now that I feel so confident and comfortable, I want to take this language that's, historically white, male, old, and I want to subvert it, and I want to tell it from an ESL Cuban American perspective. So I'm really excited about that project, actually.
That's very exciting. I love that. Well, one of the things that I noticed when like reviewing your films and everything is how a lot of them center on like the child's perspective. And I was wondering if that's like pulling from your childhood and how your like own childhood has impacted your stories in film.
Yeah, actually. So absolutely, yes. I was Lily, I was in Little Con Lily. If your listeners don't know the story, Little Con Lily is about a little girl who's home alone. She's supposed to be doing her homework, but instead of doing her homework, her mom's at work. She's just munching on all the goodies in her house and watching her favorite musical band on television until her mom comes home too soon, and then Lily has to like hustle to make it seem like she had been doing her homework the entire time. So yes, I was definitely Lily. My mom and my dad, they worked till late. So a lot of times, as soon as I was old enough, I would walk home from school by myself, and I would eat cereal and watch TV until they got home, and I should have been doing my homework. So definitely, there's a bit of nostalgia, and there's definitely an influence of my life. But I hope that everyone who watches it can relate to those moments in their own lives. And in terms of Birdie the Brilliant, which is a film at this festival, that's a mixture of my life and my little cousin. My little
Mm.
cousin grew up in Cuba in the 90s, and that was during the special period in Cuba where things were very scarce. There wasn't a lot of food, things were just difficult to find. And there was this new little like hamburger place that opened up near our house, but it was in dollars. And families in Cuba, they don't make dollars, so it was really expensive. But every day she walked by it, she's like, oh, I wish I could have this hamburger meal. And so
Mm.
my aunt was like, I'll give you a quarter like every day if you behave and if you help out around the house, and then you can save up, and this will be a lesson for you. And so she saved up like all her little coins, and she was so excited. Every day she would walk by this new hamburger place and she would imagine like her burger and fries and milkshake. And then like finally, like a few weeks later, she raised the money and she's gonna go get it. And then she overheard my great grandparents talking about milk and how they hadn't tasted milk in so long. And so she went out to get this hamburger and came back instead with like a bottle of milk from the black market for my great grandparents. And that was
Oh.
such a beautiful moment, and it stayed with me like every time. Even like 20 years later, my cousin's now 30 or 30
Mm.
something, and even this much time has passed, when I hear my aunt tell this story, it still brings tears and emotion to her eyes, that this little girl did this, and it's something she really wanted, and she sacrificed it because for the great grandparents. And so I really, that the emotion was still so raw, and it was so universal, that I wanted to base Birdie on a story kind of like that.
I love that. That story gave me chills. That's
Oh,
so sweet and like for someone so young to think like that is
yeah.
it's
And then
just so
Birdie is
sweet.
also me because I was a little kid hustler. So I would always be trying to figure out how to make a few pesos. So if like my aunt bought some candy at the circus, we'd come home from the circus and I would split the candy into like little 10 pieces of candy. I'd wrap them in like paper and I would go out and I'd sell it on the street with my cousin. So I wanted Birdie to have this little bit of grit and spice to him as well.
I love that. And that's premiering today, right, at the
That
film
is
festival?
tonight. Yeah.
How excited, how do you prepare for like festivals and premiering films like that?
To be honest, a lot of my films have premiered at virtual festivals because
Ah,
of COVID.
mm-hmm.
But I mean, I don't know. You just go, and I just I trust that it's a beautiful story, and I'm very excited. I'm not nervous. I'm not worried in any way. I just think it's a story that needs to be told. There's a space for it. There's an audience for it, and I can't wait for the world to see it. And I want to bring joy to my audience. I want them to feel good about themselves when they're watching it.
Yeah, and you had mentioned before we started recording, you mentioned like wanting to bring like an uplifting and fun story to represent the Latin community rather than like showing the traumas and everything. Do you mind talking a little bit about that?
Yeah, I just feel like, and I'm going to be very honest with you, I feel kind of stifled even in this industry as more opportunities are arising for Latino and people of color filmmakers. I feel like those opportunities are still being curated mostly by white people. And those curators, they want this like almost trauma porn or these stories of
Hmm.
struggle, or even like these films like Coda, or these films about like, the disability of this person, or the brownness of this Latino and that their struggle. And while there's absolutely room and space for those stories to be told, I don't want to feel limited to that. I want
Hmm.
to be able to tell every kind of story, just like Tarantino can tell like a kung fu, fun action comedy. Like, I want to do that as a Latina. Why
Yeah.
can't I do that as a Latina? I want to tell just a positive, Disney-esque, beautiful birdie story of magic. And I want to, that's revolutionary in itself. The
Hmm.
fact that it doesn't deal with the trauma or the harshness, or, you know, the hustle that we had to go through, that the fact that it can just be uplifting and positive, that is revolutionary within itself. Because I do feel like, as much as we are making strides to be able to tell every kind of story, and as much as our voices are starting to be, the industry is starting to realize the importance of our stories and our presence in this industry, it's still kind of limited to what like, we're not even allowed to tell comedies sometimes.
Right.
Why not? you know so I want to change that. Everything
Yeah,
I ever
and
make, I want to change that.
I love that as well. I think that right now, for some reason, I feel like all like film and even TV is so dark, and trying to pull these like really drama or dramatic and like dark stories. And I especially in like the Latin community of representing or bringing these like very heavy stories. And I feel like representation means showing every side, and not
Absolutely.
every side is dark and traumatic. And so and one thing I really loved about watching your work is the colors. Everything is so vibrant, and it just looks so like it is uplifting just in the visual like side of it as well. Which is really different, I think, to a lot of like other films that focus on the Latin, like you said, the traumatic experience. They're usually a lot like the colors are muted, and it's not so. It doesn't look bright. It doesn't bring that uplifting feeling that I can tell that you're doing with your work.
Yeah, like color, production design, costumes, hair and makeup, like every element of filmmaking as a director, I take very um, intentional focus on. And yes,
Hmm.
I love brightness. I love poppy, beautiful. Like, I sometimes call it like a starburst in your mouth, like those candies. I want that feeling color wise in my films and in my worlds, for sure.
Yeah, and I can tell you're doing that, especially in like the trailer for Birdie, with even just the like sparkles in the costume and the like makeup and everything. You can feel that like excitement in just seeing it visually, which is something I always really love from film, is looking at the colors and like how color is used to evoke emotion. And you're doing like what you're doing with it is really cool to see.
Thank you. And I think I hold myself, and everyone really, but myself especially, to a very high standard, because I feel like so much pressure to constantly prove myself, especially in this industry, that I take very intentional approach in every little detail of a production. And I want to make sure that everything has been used to its fullest potential to completely and most intentionally express exactly what I envision in my mind. Because when people watch our films, I want them to see that the reason there's not more of us in this industry is not due to lack of talent, but to lack
Hmm.
of resources. So I hold myself to really high standards, and from the color to the editing to the credit sequences, like, I take very great care in making sure that everything is very deliberate.
Yeah, and I actually wanted to ask you about the credit sequence in the Lilycon movie or film. The credit sequence is on like different objects, right?
It is, yeah.
Do you mind talking a little bit about that and what the like story behind that is?
Yeah, I have big ideas, and don't I think I can make anything happen, even when it's really difficult. And we had 2 days to shoot Lily, and I came up with this really good idea. I'm like, I don't want to have generic credits. I want to have these objects from the film and from the set to be to use them as the credits in Lily, because it'd be really fun and it'd be kind of cheeky. But everyone was like, "You don't have time. You can't do it." And I was like, "No, no, no. I'm gonna do this." And so During during Lily the last day, we were running out of time because, you know, the little girl could only be there for a specific amount of time. And
Mhm.
so I ended up like having another friend come in as a second camera person. And while we were shooting one scene, I was using my own hands as if I was Lily to move certain things, or I was using hands of like other crew members to help execute this at the same time as we were shooting the film, because I really didn't want to give up this creative idea, because it's part of the film. It adds to the charm and it makes you want to watch it all the way through. And in a way, honestly, it's also to honor it's for me. And if you watch all my credit sequences in 90 Day Plan and Birdie, they're all like this. They're all creative. They're very different than Lily, but they're all creatively thought out for you to want to watch it and enjoy it.
Mm.
And yeah, I just want to honor like my cast and crew. And so I felt like doing something special and making people want to stay to watch the credits would be a really nice way to honor the hard work of, you know, I would call them my friends at this point, who have donated or worked for very little money to help me execute my vision.
Mhm. And to spend that time to show their name in that film and, like, honor their work is really cool.
In a way that's more just like the scrolling basic thing that you have to add at the end of a movie.
Right, yeah, and it's such a, like, small part, but it does have such an impact on how you feel when the movie closes. Like, you still wanna sit there and you wanna watch it because so I studied film in school as well, and one of the things I remember was every teacher I had, when you finished a film, you sat there and you watched all of the credits.
Right, because
And,
you want to
like
do that out of respect.
yeah, exactly, and so many people finish watching a movie and they turn it off as soon as the credits start rolling, and I think that that's such a great way of making people wanna see it so that they're seeing those names and they are honoring the work that went into it.
Thank
So
you.
I think that's really cool, and I wish more filmmakers would do that because it really is it ends the movie on such a, like, special note and is memorable.
So in the 90 Day Plan, which is a film I made after Lily, it's all about this young woman who makes a plan to rob a bank, and she's got this planner, and inside her planner is like her 90-day plan of how she's going to execute this. And in the credits, I use the planner as the way to show creatively the credits. And in Birdie, I tried to do a stop motion sequence for the credits that I personally did myself, and I have no experience doing stop motion, and it was terrible. And so I was like, shoot, I need to come up with like another idea, because I can't just have these scrolling credits. And so I had this idea of, because Birdie is present day, but it skews in like this 1970s like world of color and you know and tone. And so I was like, oh, what if it's like a 70s style animation? And I had figured out how to slightly do animation through messing up at the stop motion stuff. So I was able to create something really, really cool for Birdie as well. I'm committed to
Mm.
like really fun credits.
Oh, I'm excited. I'm gonna when the movie or when I'm able to watch it, I'm gonna see or stay and look for those credits because that sounds super cool.
Love it.
Um, the other question I had for you, so you had mentioned like feeling alienated at UCLA a little bit, which brought you into like studying the Chicano studies and things like that. One thing that we like our podcast aims to do is to kind of talk about people who have overcome like feeling any kind of struggle or like struggling mentally in any way to get through and still find success and well-being in themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to ask if you have any experience with that and if you have any like what do you do to overcome when you feel that way and still chase the success that you're after?
That is a good question. So yeah, I mean, growing up in Cuba, I never felt alienated. Growing up, I actually from Cuba, my family immigrated to England, so I did live in London for many years, and
Mhm.
there I wasn't. Latinos weren't the minority. It was more like Indian and African as well, but not really like I could pass kind of as white. I even though my English and my family's English wasn't very good, it was never a thing. And then coming to the US was the first time that I was like, oh, like this is a thing. And also like I to be completely honest, I grew up fantasizing white culture, and I think you see that in Lily as well. She
Mhm.
fantasizes this white band, you know, and I grew up on Growing Pains and Family Ties and all these shows and movies that told me that whiteness was great. And so coming to terms with that when I was 18 or 19, living by myself at UCLA was very difficult. But I guess just educating myself, just trusting my instinct was like, go for Chicano studies, go for African American studies, like get to know these people that are like you in many ways. That just ended up really enriching my art and my
Mm-hmm.
creative practice. And then the other thing I want to say is I think it's easy to be underestimated as a Latina female filmmaker.
Mm-hmm.
So I am driven when someone underestimates me or thinks I can't do something. My immediate instinct is like, watch me. And then I go out and it fuels me to work even harder, and it's what I was
Mm-hmm.
saying about I want this industry to see that our lack of representation is not due to lack of talent, it's due to lack of resources. So I hold myself to very high standards to produce something that is really strong. That's the best way I can say how I overcome. I just
No, I love
apply
that.
wholeheartedly into my work, and I trust that my creativity is there for a reason, and that I have a purpose, and I go for it.
Yeah, I think self, like believing in yourself and knowing that you can do what you want, I think is really important to overcoming those two, is to not doubting yourself and knowing that what you are passionate about, you can do it. And so I think that mentality is really really important, and I think it's a good thing for people to hear as well, because I feel like a lot of us deep down we're like, yeah, we can do it, and then somebody comes in and doubts us, and then we start to doubt ourselves.
But who are they? Who are
Yeah,
they to doubt
exactly.
you?
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that's really like a great piece of advice too for everyone listening, is that what if you know deep down that you can do it, then just forget what everybody else is saying and go for it.
And to add to that, like, I'm being completely honest, again, as an immigrant, my mom and my family did not want me to be an artist or a filmmaker. Like, I was supposed to be an engineer, a lawyer, or a doctor, or an economist, which is what my parents do. And I
Mm,
was never into that stuff. And so from an early age, I had to work really hard to prove that this is what I wanted to do and that this is what I was good at. So that's also something.
yeah, well, your films are amazing, and I know you have Lily has been turned into a feature film, right?
It is being turned into a feature film. So we actually ended up we're working with Mandalay right now. We ended up getting Jennifer Lopez's company, New Yorican, attached.
Oh
And then we
wow.
ended up getting a deal at Netflix. And unfortunately, during the Netflix purge of 2022 in May,
Mm.
my film went into turnaround, which
Oh.
means Netflix is no longer making my movie. And now we're back out with it, looking for a home for it.
Oh, well, I'm sure you're gonna find somewhere for it. It's a beautiful, beautiful short film, and I know that there's a great feature film out of it as well.
Thank you. Yeah,
Of
I'm not
course,
concerned. I feel like everything always ends up the right way and being made the way it's meant to be made.
exactly. Yeah, it'll get there one way. For sure. Well, thank you so much for being here today and sharing your story and your work with us. And best of luck today at the festival. I'm very excited for you and very honored that you took this morning to talk to me while getting ready for this big day.
Carly, thank you so much. I'm so great. I love talking about film and art and my work, and I'm so grateful that you invited me on your show.
Wishing Gabriela the best today as she leaves us to go to the premiere of her new film, Birdie the Brilliant. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, where you can stay up to date with our newest episodes and find out more about watching Gabriela's films. Thank you all for listening. Talk to you soon.